There's something powerful about the journey of leadership, the daily steps, the long-term vision, and everything we learn along the way. Welcome to Leadership Labs, where we explore these journeys with the incredible leaders of Aurora Public Schools. In each episode, we'll hear from those who are helping guide our district toward Destination APS, sharing their stories, their challenges, and the lessons they've learned along the way. I'm thrilled to kick off our very first episode with someone who exemplifies leadership as a journey, our Superintendent, Mike Giles. He's here to share his path to APS, his vision for our district, and what drives him forward in this educational marathon. So Mike, before we dive into the marathon that is educational leadership, let's start at the beginning of your day. Please tell us about your role as Superintendent of Aurora Public Schools. What's a typical day look like for you?
Well, before I jump into that, let me just start by saying thank you for having me. Thank you, first of all, for doing this, highlighting the excellent leadership that we have in our district. I'm just fortunate to have been placed in a position to serve as a superintendent, but I recognize that we have some brilliant leaders in our district. And the fact that you're highlighting the way that you're going to is special and beautiful. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
So what's the typical day of a superintendent, or my typical day? I don't even believe that there really is one. I'll tell you, when I'm at my best or my healthiest, which I feel like I have been getting there over the past 2 months, the day starts around 4:45 in the morning. I'll jump up, try to get down in the basement, get some exercise in maybe 30, 45 minutes, whether it be on the treadmill or whatever the case is. But that's hugely important for me, just to get my juices flowing, get my mind right, my body going. After that, then I'll take some time to actually meditate, which, in my younger years, I would kind of laugh at, there's people that say, oh, I meditate, but I found it to be extremely important, again, to clear my head, really refocus on what's important and what's the work that I need to do for the day. And I find when I do that, which is usually 4 days out of the week, sometimes as of recently it's been 5 days, but at least 4 days out of the week, I come to work better prepared for the day and what it has ahead of me. But from that point forward, I'll tell you, the work actually starts. Even though I may not be in the office, the work has started already. I've probably, between the time I laid my head down and woke up in the morning, I probably have another 15 to 20 emails, probably have received some text messages about what's going on in the district already, whether it be facilities. Like today, we had a power outage in one of our schools. We had an issue with a water break. So oftentimes I wake up to something like that, something with transportation, whatever the case might be. Weather. But it starts right away, right? Weather, yeah, making a call on a snow day, but it starts right away in the morning. So just really trying to identify, okay, what's important? What do I need to respond to now? And then I'll do that. And if there is nothing that's immediate, then dig it into my calendar for the day. What are my meetings? Where am I going to be throughout the day? And how do I need to just make sure I position myself so that I'm prepared to show up and be successful with whatever the day is requiring of me. So that's kind of how it starts.
Yep.
If it's a day where I'm in the office and things kind of slow roll, I'll get some time to get into my office, check in with you, check in with Candace. And then I go to trying to get through email and responding to folks that I haven't had a chance to respond to at the moment. Those are the days that I come directly to the office. The days that I don't, which I honestly enjoy the most, are the days that I get into schools. Yeah. So if I can start my week off at a school, usually I'll have 2 school visits on a Wednesday or a Thursday in the week. And those are just extremely exciting because I get to go right into schools, see kids, meet some of our brilliant school leaders and the teachers doing that thing. So that's I wouldn't say it's a typical day, but I think it's reflective of the majority of my days. And then I'll just throw, before I move on to the next, in sprinkled in here and there, and depending upon what's going on, I might be in a meeting or in conversation with legislators. I might be in a meeting or conversation with city officials. I may be in a meeting or conversation with other superintendents across the district. Making appearances or at different lunches or breakfasts that are important to forging that community, that relationship between the community and the schools. But those things are just sprinkled throughout the week right. On a irregular basis. So.
That's great. Thank you, and also a plug for principals and other leaders throughout the district that will be coming to you all to tell us about your leadership lab soon. Before we do another deep dive into your journey, can you just give us a quick snapshot of your career path? How did you go from out of college to superintendent?
Yeah, it's wild. I'll tell you, as when I was in high school, and I'm not going to take you that far back, but just to know, when I was
Way
in high
back.
school, I know, right? Way back in the day. When I was in high school, I had a great math teacher and I had a great psychology teacher, and they piqued my interest in being a teacher of either of those two subjects. However, I went into college and I actually studied sociology and criminology, and I graduated. Upon graduation, I became a juvenile youth corrections counselor, which I love the job, but I really got discouraged, I guess, with the fact of doing great work with our youth inside of the system. And then they would leave the system, and within a year would be right back in the system. You know, just the recidivism rate wasn't what it should have been. And so that, coupled with just me remembering how much I appreciated the two teachers that I talked about, caused me to think about transitioning into educational counseling as opposed to staying in the criminal justice world. And so I went back, got my master's, and as upon graduating with my master's, I went right into educational counseling in middle school and did that for a couple of years. And, you know, you've heard me talk a lot of times about people seeing something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself. Because if you had asked me at the time, I was going to be a career counselor. I was going to be a counselor and coach. And that's what I would have done for the next 30, 35 years. But I had a principal and I had some administrators who said, you know what, you should think about an administrative track. And so I did. I became a dean, went back and got my administrative license, and then as assistant principal, and then I had an opportunity to serve as an executive director at the district level, and then finally, before assuming this role, as an assistant superintendent for a few years.
Thank you. That's great. So, talk us a little to us a little bit about some of the key moments in your journey to becoming superintendent. So, you know, being a district leader and then making the decision to throw your name into the mix. What encouraged you or inspired you to take that leap?
I think some of the largest key moments, I'm going to go back to when I decided that I didn't want to be a juvenile corrections counselor anymore. I wanted to be more proactive. I feel like that's where the greatest need was, to keep students from even going the path of being incarcerated or detained. And so when I made the decision to go back to school and get my master's and then go into educational counseling, that was pivotal because I was very much resolute in what my values were and how I could best use my talents and my skills to better serve the students or the youth in my community. So that was number one. Number two was when someone came to me and said, you know, you should think about becoming an administrator someday. And they pushed me to apply for an assistant principal position. And I remember at the time, the pool was pretty deep. And I honestly felt like there was no way that I would be elevated to that, to that position. And sure enough, I landed that job in a pretty large pool of people who I think were way more talented than I did. But again, going back to when people see something in you, and if you're really grounded, or at least I'll speak for myself, being grounded in who I am and what I'm here to do, I was fortunate enough to achieve that position as an assistant principal. And then I got closer to the principalship, and after 5 years as an AP, I was like, wow, I could see myself actually doing this and, you know, leading the school community and making a contribution in a different way. So I did that. So that was another pivotal moment for me and a great experience. I learned so much what it means to lead a school, to lead educators, to lead a community, all in service of, you know, creating better outcomes for kids. And then as I shared, I became an executive director, did that for a while. And then after 5 years as an executive director, the new superintendent came and asked me, as he was thinking about restructuring his cabinet, and asked me, would I accept the position of assistant principal? And I promise you, as we're sitting here right here, as assistant superintendent, I'm sorry, as we're sitting right here, right, I laughed because I didn't think that's what he called me up there for, number one. And then number two, I thought he was joking. And I remember the reaction he had is like he was offended that I laughed at him. And I said, hold on, let me back up and apologize. I'm just laughing because I had no clue that's what you were going to ask me, you know? And so we had the conversation, talked to him about why he thought I should do it. And when I realized that he had a high level of confidence in my ability to be in that role, I said, of course I would, if you're going to ask me to do it. And I will tell you, it was a fulfilling job in the manner that I learned so much. I learned so much about myself. I learned how to navigate some hardships. In that role was going through COVID and had to make some huge cuts in our department. Probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. But I think it prepared me for where I am here today. Mm-hmm. And so getting to this position here, even as an assistant superintendent, I never really thought about becoming a superintendent, but I used to joke with some friends, or obviously it wasn't a joke. I would say to some friends, the only place I would consider that is in Aurora, because I've lived here for 26 years. I feel like I've been a part of this community for a long time, deeply embedded in the community. But I honestly didn't think that was going to happen anytime soon, because the previous superintendent had been here so long, and I didn't anticipate that they would not be here. But when the job came open, it just felt right. It really felt right. So I put my name in the hat, and here I am.
We're glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
You mentioned a couple times having people in your life who saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself at the time. Who were some of those key mentors in your journey, and what's something that you learned from them?
I'm going to name drop just a couple of folks. I'm going to try to go through them pretty quickly. But Cindy Fisher was the principal that hired me at Falcon Creek. She hired me as a counselor at Falcon Creek. Oddly enough, I had applied for other jobs that I really didn't want that job. She, as soon as I finished the interview, she came into the parking lot as I was getting in my car and said, "If I offer you the job right now, will you take it?" And I was again in shock. And I said, "Well, can I get at least 24 hours to think about it and blah, blah, blah." And she said, "Of course you can, but I just want you to know we're offering you the job." Long story short, I took that job, but she fed into me. She really did. I mean, I don't know what she saw or why she felt obligated to feed into me the way she did, but she made sure that I had access to what leadership looked like in a school. She made sure that I had access to professional learning opportunities. In a community that had not necessarily seen a person like me in leadership. She pushed me out front several times, which I truly appreciated. So she's one. Then Brooke Gregory was an assistant superintendent at Cherry Creek. She also caught me at a very young age. She was the executive director of what we used to call equity at the time in that district. And to watch her in her role as a woman of color lead that district around some work that had not really been done at the deep level was not only inspiring, but it kind of also made me feel obligated that, if she can do that where she is, the way she's doing it, then I need to show up and, be the leader that I think I was called to be. And so anyway, we formed a really strong relationship, and she's constantly, even to this day, pouring into me, checking in on me. And if there's anything I need, she's always there. And then I'll name two more people. And as I wrap up, John Kennedy was a principal at Falcon Creek. He came in and also demonstrated to me what it means to live, to be your authentic self in leadership. John, John has a very strong personality. And so some people either love him or they don't. But what I'll tell you, he's unapologetically him, and he's unapologetically a fighter for the kids in the community. And I don't care what's in front of him. If it's a barrier to kids being successful, he's going to run through it, right? Mm-hmm. And so his approach and my approach may be different, but the spirit of we're not going to let people put barriers in front of our kids is something that I got from him. And then the last person I just have to name out loud is Tracy Grant. She was an administrator, and then she went into HR during the course of my career, and she always looked out for me the same way. And she was more of a spiritual coach. So rather than kind of telling me how to do, what to do, and she always just checked in and said, how's your heart? How are you feeling? And she still does that to this day. She'll send me a text of a scripture or something or a quote that really speaks to the spirit. And people like that have been really beneficial in my life.
I love that so much. And I know I've shared with you, I'm a mama's boy, and I've been really fortunate to have tons of mostly women mentors as an educator who have also poured into me. So that really resonates for me. I want to take us back to that transition to applying to be the superintendent here in Aurora. I know you mentioned having lived here for as long as you have, and having joked around with folks, that if you were ever to take the leap, it'd be here in Aurora. What are some of the things that specifically drew you to to apply once it was open? That the time is now, and why Aurora?
Through the course of my career, I think people have known that I've been, whether by title or just in my work, I've been a champion for equity. Always have been. And to have the opportunity to lead and serve a district that is made up the way Aurora Public Schools is, so the cultural diversity, the racial makeup, the social economic makeup, all of that. If I am who I say I am, then I think I would be doing myself and the gifter a disservice by not applying for this role. So that really hit hard with me. That again, if I'm going to be true to myself and all the things I say I believe in, then I need to apply and see how it goes. So that was one of the things that really stood out to me. And then also being adjacent to Aurora Public Schools for 20 plus years as I was serving in the district next door. I saw the passion. There was a great deal of passion in the leadership and the educators in our system. And so that's something that I feel like I could be a part of. I could bring, not only attach myself to, but also bring what I feel, I've been gifted with to encourage and continue to pour into and breathe that passion that exists. And then just lastly, again, and through all my travels being out here, I've worked with so many different youth groups that I kind of feel like these are my, I won't say my kids, but the students in this area they're like my family, Yeah. And so again, not wanting to leave that to chance when I had an opportunity to be one to step in and demonstrate some leadership and service.
I know it's only been about 1.5 years so far.
About.
But what are some of the things that you've been proudest of over the course of the last 1.5 years?
Here's what I'm going to answer with this, but I want to be very clear as to why I am extremely proud of us passing $1 billion bond, the first in the state. And where a lot of folks around us, when we even said the word in the beginning, said, you're crazy to even go for that much. Yeah. The thing that I'm most proudest of is the degree to which we passed it. It was almost non-contested at all. And what that means to me is that our community has demonstrated great faith and great support in the work that we're doing, as well as they believe that our kids deserve better. Yeah. And so more than the act of passing it, it's the way in which we did and the vote of confidence that was illustrated in the way that went down. I would say that's the proudest moment thus far. Oh, there have been a lot of other great things, but that one right there stands tall for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. So APS is the most diverse school district in Colorado. As you know, we serve nearly 40,000 students, 130 different countries of origin, 160 different languages across 60 different schools. We're geographically large and we're growing. How do you build and maintain relationships across such a big school district?
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm constantly wrestling with on a daily basis, because just when you think you're doing a good job, there's always someone that you're missing or you're not connecting with, right? So there are a couple of things. Number one, try my best to be visible. So I appreciate in coordination with you and with Candice, our assistant, getting me into schools every week, right? So just being out into schools, in the classrooms, or if there are events going around, trying to be physically present so people can see the face, people can actually feel like they can walk up to me and say hello, ask questions, whatever the case is. I think that's hugely important. Last year, I was very intentional about having community engagement opportunities with different communities. So folks from different cultures, working with our community partners to help us coordinate that, so that I can be in physical space and answer the questions that are germane to particular representative of different groups around the community. I think that was important. I haven't done it as much this year, but that's something that I need to get back to. The other piece too is realizing that it doesn't need to be, well, let me really quickly, using technology. So I love what you're doing right here with the podcast. Working with Patty Moon and her team, recording videos and trying to just get my face and my voice out in different spaces as much as possible. But the other piece is just being realistic and understanding that it doesn't need to be, or it doesn't have to be, or need to be me. And so how am I diversifying my team? How am I ensuring that my leadership team is diverse? And then from there on, how do we create hiring practices throughout the system that our educators and our adults are diverse so that we can connect with different parts of the community too. We haven't, or let me say under my tenure, I haven't gotten there yet, but that's something that I aspire to us achieving, is really achieving great diversity that's reflective of the community that we serve.
I love that. I think kind of on a similar thread here, after a year and a half and really especially, and this never ends. You're a listening leader. That doesn't, only happen during the first year. It's a continuous thing. But after learning about the system, learning more about the players on our team, and continuing just to listen, is there anything that you've learned about APS or anything that has evolved in terms of your leadership since joining APS?
For me personally, or for the system? Restate the question for me. I'm sorry.
Either way. So as in your own leadership, just after being here a year and a half, is there anything based on what you've learned that has changed, or just something that you've learned about our system in the last year and a half, being entrenched and listening to lots of different stakeholders?
So the couple things that ring loudly for me right now. Number one, I knew, but I didn't know until I sat in the seat. Number one, we have our students are brilliant. If they have the right opportunity, support, and resources, they're going to shine 10 times out of 10.
Yep.
And I say that from being in the classrooms. I say that from the leadership group that we have, superintendent's leadership group. Anytime we pose a question and give them an opportunity to talk about what's most important to them, they far exceed, our expectations. Yeah. So that is affirming. And what it also does is it motivates me to continue to find time to elevate their voice and give them an opportunity to be contributors to their experiences instead of just consumers. You and I were having a conversation a little earlier about your very important thing that's coming up for us soon. And I asked you about, how can we find a way to get student voice there?
Yep.
It's because of that recognition that they need to have a seat at the table, and not only a seat, but also be able to contribute.
Okay.
So that's one thing. We have a tremendous amount of resources. I would tell you, from our businesses to people want to support APS. They want to see us be successful. That was evidenced by, passing the bond successfully the way we did. The key for me is trying to figure out how do we tap into that, and in a sustainable way, a meaningful way, so that we can give our students the best resources and opportunities, possible. I think for me too, the thing that I've learned though is that I never considered, so I'm speaking for me personally now, the growth edge for me is that I've never considered myself to be a quote unquote politician. But I'm learning that in this role, I do have to do a lot of politics, or at least being in different places to carry the message of APS, to fight on behalf of APS. And that could be, like I said, with legislators, it could be with city council, with city staff, state staff, and sometimes even at a federal level. And I'm learning to embrace that more and figure out how I can do that, but do it in a way that's still authentic to me.
Yep.
So I think that's probably one of the big growth curves for me.
I appreciate that, and just for our listeners, as you wrap your head around what does the Leadership Lab really mean, and part of it is a journey, and also the long game, and different paths and bumps and ups and downs, challenges. Not every run's a smooth one. And so thank you for just being so open to share some of those reflections. Relatedly, in any marathon, there's some significant mile markers that stand out. If you've ever ran the Boulder-thon, which I recommend doing once only, you hit that mile 14, and boy, it's it's a tough like mile and a half stretch in Boulder. But would love to explore some of those key moments in your journey. If you'd be willing to share a challenge, or a challenging time, either in the last year and a half here in Aurora, or just in general, as a leader, and how you worked through it?
I have to go back to, and I share with you in my previous role as an assistant superintendent in another district when we ran into, COVID ran into us, if you will, right? And I was assistant superintendent over performance improvement, so it's the academic side of the house, and we had a lot of central office staff that served schools, but they were central office staff.
Right.
And because of the support that was needed to support students in schools during the time of COVID, I had to make significant cuts in that office. And it was really tough for a number of different reasons. The first one just being we were just starting to get some systems in place because I was fairly new in that role. I think that was my second year in that role. And we're starting to get some really good systems in place, build some cohesion, some vision, and people moving in the right direction. And then just like that, we had to dismantle the entire department.
Mm.
And of course, when you're moving people's cheese, taking them out of their comfort zone, that doesn't always go over so well.
Right.
So to have to navigate that and really reduce my office to probably anywhere from 60 to 70 down to 15 people, it was really, really tough. But we did it. And I will tell you the bounce back after. So get into the lesson. First of all, the lesson in how to do that and how to do it with care and with dignity and staying true to the purpose and the reason behind the decision. That was a lesson for me, as hard as it was. But then once we were able to start to kind of bounce back from COVID and then rebuild, there was something beautiful in that process too, because we were able to build something new. And they're all the saying, and I probably mess up the saying when God takes one thing out of your hand, he's opening your hands for something else or something new. And that's exactly what that experience was for me. So what I learned from that is, although it may be difficult, it may hurt or be hard, sometimes you have to go through the cuts to get whatever's coming ahead in the future, right? Yeah. So I'll just stick with that. That's probably the monumental, difficult challenge that I've had.
And we learn a lot of our lessons through those challenges, and I guess relatedly, what's a leadership lesson that you find yourself sharing most often with aspiring leaders?
Gosh, there's so many. I don't know which one. I think the way it was funny. I haven't said this, but I consider myself to be a servant leader. So it's always about service and serving, the community and the students. I also try to lead with dignity, and so even in the toughest of times, the hardest issues, I try to treat people with kindness and dignity as much as possible. I also feel like you talked about being a listening leader. I don't think that you can lead without truly listening to what the needs are of the people that you're serving, or even the people that are working with you, right? So we have a team. I'm asking you all to do tough work, but if I don't take the time to listen to how I can best support you to do that work or what you need to be successful, then I'm missing great opportunity. And then the last thing that just when you initially asked the question that came up for me is that we're in a business that as much as we want to have the master plan and be able to predict how things are going to shake out, I think right now we're realizing that we can't. And so one of the things I mentioned, John Kennedy, he used to say all the time was, blessed are the flexible, for they will not break. Right. And so just trying to maintain a mindset of I just have to be ready be agile and flexible because things are going to come at us all the time.
I love that. So, all right. We're going to transition into a little bit of a lighter space. So the leadership playlist. We listen to a lot of good tunes in this office, but every runner needs the right soundtrack. So let's talk about what keeps you motivated on the journey. The first question is around books. So what leadership books or resources have either significantly influenced you, or what is just something that you've recently read that you'd recommend to leaders out there listening?
I have to tell you right now, I'm reading, and I'm sad to even try to name. I can't remember the exact title of his book, but you know the gentleman well, Dr. Michael Hinojosa.
Oh yeah,
longtime leader in the education world. primarily out of Dallas, but I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a cohort with him, and he has us reading his most recent book. And what I love about it is that it's very concise. It's a very easy read, but it makes all of the sense in the world. It really does. And so I'm just taking so much from it to keep myself centered and not try to make things harder than they need to be. And calling things for what they are too. Like when I talked about being a politician, understanding that politics are necessary in this game, right? So just figure out how you can best do that in service to your district while still maintaining who you are. And I apologize. I can't even think of the name of the book, but we have so many different books in rotation right now. But I think that one right now is feeding me the most.
That's great.
And then I would say I got another book from Yolanda Greer, the Leadership Bible.
Oh.
And that one is really good too. And it's actually takes the entire Bible, and then for every story, every book of the Bible, there's a leadership lesson and story in it. So
that's great.
I don't get to read it as much as I would like to, but every time I do get into it, it's just it's really inspiring.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're gonna transition into what's playing in your leadership headphones, either song, album, artist, genre. What are you listening to?
So it depends on the mood, depends on where I'm going and what the day is. But I will tell you what always gets played for me, takes me all the way back to being in junior high school, is Eric B. and Rakim's Follow the Leader. That's that. Anytime I'm about to go present, anytime I have to be in front of a big crowd, that always gets played in my car before I get out and go in.
I love that.
Yeah. So, and there are many others, but that's primarily the one.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
We're nearing the finish line of our conversation, but I want to sprint through just a few quick questions for a lightning round about Destination APS.
Okay.
As the visionary of Destination APS, what does it mean to you?
Oh wow! It means the utopia of the educational experience for not only our students. I'll start with our students, but our staff and the community. So when I talk about being safe, seen, valued, right? When I talk about students thriving at the highest potential, so graduating, prepared for college career, whatever their choice is. When I talk about educators choosing to stay here in APS, right? Not here because I don't have any other choice, but they want to stay here because of the experience that they have. That's the utopia that I want to create, and we're producing students that go out into the world and they take over the world because they're well equipped.
Yeah. Thank you. What excites you the most about the future here in APS?
What excites me is that the landscape is wide open for us. When I think about the growth that's happening out here and the opportunity that comes along with that, I think about us. We're already moving into the realm of P-Tech. We're talking about the health science high school. Yep. And yet there's so much more opportunity that we haven't even tapped into. Right. So I get excited about us discovering what those opportunities are, who our partners are, and then how we build a pathway for our students. I think about also just that spirit of, not only the spirit of, but the outcome of excellence. So you and I have had this conversation, whereas, when we think about accountability measures and state assessments, and I don't put all of our eggs in that basket, but it's an indicator. Not just looking at, are we close to the state, where it's kind of been traditionally where we are, but I'm looking for that day where we outpace the state every single year, and that's the expectation. And if that doesn't happen, then that's something significantly wrong, right? But just that spirit and that outcome of excellence.
Yeah, we talk about that quite often, and just like you, I'm confident that we and the team are on the right path and on the right trajectory and headed to that Destination APS. What's the last piece of advice that you would give to educators who are out there listening today, or just folks out there in our system in particular who aspire to leadership roles?
I would say don't get caught up like I did at one time, believing the hype that
don't believe
right, exactly. That it's either too hard or it's not rewarding. I would tell you that these jobs are they hard? Yes, they are, but they're not so hard that we can't do it, right? And then number two, they are so rewarding. When you actually see the impact that you intend for, the community you serve come to fruition, I don't know of any better feeling, or like, this is how I know I'm getting old now. I'll be out in the restaurant or be out in the community somewhere and I'll have an adult. I mean, I'm 30 years old come to me and say, Mr. Giles, remember when you XYZ, you were my principal, you were this, that, and the next. I'm like, wow. So just to know that you had that kind of an impact on an individual's life, right, tells me that what I've done along the way on my marathon has been worth it. So I think that would be my advice. Don't get discouraged by the hard work, and don't buy the hype that it's not rewarding, because it absolutely is.
Yes.
So
you remind me of a school visit we did not too long ago. We had a teacher who made it a point to come and say hi to Mike, and hey, it's so good to see you. I was at Laredo while you were there, and Mike said hello and everything, and we continued with our tour of the school, and about 5 minutes later, the same educator rolled up on us and said, I just want you to know I was a student.
As if I didn't know that already, right?
Right. And so they had to point out that, it was a long time ago. But Mike, this has been an incredible start to our Leadership Labs journey. Thank you for always modeling the way. Your insights really highlight how leadership, like the marathon, is about perseverance, vision, and bringing people along with you on the journey. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for the first lap of the podcast. Join us next time as we continue to explore the paths of those who are helping guide us toward Destination APS. Until then, keep running your pace with purpose.
Again, thank you.